Welcome back and thank you for staying with KTN Prime. Now we start our conversation. As I'd mentioned earlier, we'll be talking about a number of things, from the burden of advisors, as is on the headline of tomorrow's edition of The Standard, to President William Ruto's Migori tour, to everything in between. New face opposition. And joining me for this particular conversation, so far we only have Fanyamambo Kinuthia, who is a lawyer. Good evening and thank you so much for making time.
Very good evening to you, and I'm happy to be here, honored to be here as usual. I wish they would call me here every day. There's just something special about this KTN studio. So I'm happy to be, and
thank
of course,
you.
Good host, Ashley.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
And of course, we're equally expecting Ishmael Nyaribo, who's an advocate of the High Court. He's on his way. But as we wait for Ishmael, let's just start with this headline that is on tomorrow's edition of The Standard. Burden of advisors. It costs us around 1 billion shillings annually. So far, how many are they? Around 20? I even lost count. There's one who was just appointed just the other day, Professor Makau. So Kenyans really don't see the need. Maybe you can break it down for what's the need for all these advisors?
I think we need to be serious as a country. Because I have always said, the way a Kenyan buys a cow from the auction or a goat from the auction is a lot more serious and deliberate than the way they vote. And then they vote for people who, once they are in elective office, they go and look for the damnedest, the least gifted upstairs. And then they have to hire 7 advisors to advise this damn person. So you ask yourself as a nation, why was it necessary to hire a very foolish person and then hire 7 advisors for this foolish person? Wasn't it easier and more economical to just hire or procure the services of someone who's got some little common sense going on in their head?
Yeah.
Then you don't need advisors. Secondly, why would you want to spend $1 billion on advisors in a year and then go to China to borrow $5 billion to build the Nithi Bridge? You're almost there. You're almost there. So the burden of advisors, we feel it as taxpayers because look at the quality of advice. You have so many advisors, and then they advise you to go and take a country halfway through your term into a full campaign mode. What kind of advice is that? Who advises the president that this is a good time to start campaigns? Because when he starts, the opposition counters him. And when the opposition counters him, the whole country gets into a campaign mode. And when tourists see that Kenya is in a campaign mode, they don't come. When investors see that Kenya is in a campaign mode, they don't come. When any serious person who wanted to hold a conference here decides to take it to Arusha, and we've lost so many conferences and workshops, by the way, to Tanzania and Rwanda, just because of the current political upheavals that we are having as a country. So if I was speaking to the head of state today, I would tell him one of the first things you need to do is fire your advisors. There is no way you as the head of state would be leading the country into a campaign mode this early in the season.
Because that was my next concern, or Kenyans' concern. I mean, if you look at just this 2025, we're in the 5th month, how many tours, development tours, have been had? I mean, just last month, the president was, okay, right now he's in Migori. Last month, he was in Mount Kenya. Before that, he was in the coast, and then the northeastern region, and then western. This is aside from the international trips. I mean, as Kenyans, should we be worried? Is there room for concern? Are we in the right state of mind to be concerned about this?
Rolling Stones gather no moss. The president has been all over the place. I wish he sat at Harambee House. You know, in Harambee House, there are no flying shoes. We've never heard of a flying shoe going into Harambee House. I wish the head of state just, sat at Harambee House and decided to work from there for Kenyans. The last trip he made before getting lost in Rome, on the streets of Rome, was in China. And in China, the head of state went to, borrow money. For one of the reasons was to build Nithi Bridge. And I asked, wait a minute, who sends their deputy president to Kenya's biggest trading partner and goes to a country that is not anywhere close to our biggest trading partners. We trade a lot more with Uganda than we shall ever trade with China.
But he did,
so
I think...
when you send your deputy president to Uganda
yeah.
and go to China, it shows misplaced. If I was head of state today and I got a call from the Ugandan president and another call from China, believe you me, I would go to Uganda because Uganda is Kenya's biggest trading partner. For anybody who did not know, I want you to check how much money Kenya exchanges between ourselves and Ugandans. We trade more with Uganda. We earn more from Ugandans than we shall ever earn from the Chinese.
Yeah.
In fact, from the Chinese, we get loans that we pay the interest, so they benefit more from us than we benefit from them. So I feel, why would the head of state leave the country and go to China and not Uganda and send his deputy to Uganda? And this is where the imbalance comes in. So I wish he was just wise enough to sit at Harambee House and make serious executive decisions that will impact on the life of Kenyans without taking Kenya into a full campaign mode. Because right now, we are in a complete campaign mode. You'd think the elections are tomorrow morning.
Okay. Allow me at this particular point to just welcome Ishmael Nyaribo, an advocate of the High Court. Good evening. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Mr. Kinuthia, for holding brief.
He's welcoming you. But you know, you came in at the right point, because we're talking about President William Ruto's 3-day tour of Migori. And of course, there's concerns from Kenyans that the president has been going on a development tour, one after the other. When does he work, you know? But maybe from where you sit, let's draw parallels from the previous regimes that we've had. Did we see this much development tour? I mean, if you look at the president is launching houses that are not even, you know, built, or markets that are incomplete. There's no tangible evidence that, you know, this is a project that needs a president to be there for it to be launched or commissioned.
Yeah, you see, I mean, development is important for any regime, and the reassurance that development is going on is very important for citizens and also for the good of the office. I mean, somebody wants to be identified with development. Someone wants, I mean, the president actually wants to be identified with development, wants to be known to have created or started this or that project, inaugurated it, and then he probably wants also the message to go out there that yes, development has been done. Now, whether that is being done or not, you see now it's another thesis, because Morara used to go around and showcase developments that have not been done, and yet there is a claim that they have been done. Now, he seems to have given up on that, and it looks like we just have to believe what the head of state is saying and the executive office what he's saying. But I think in reality, presidential work should be more in the office in the planning aspects. And then his people from the executive, from the office of the president, the ministries, should go down there to all regions to see whether development has been done. Then they bring back the information that yes, we have gone to Migori, we have been to Nyeri, we have gone to Turkana. We have seen that yes, that project that was funded by XYZ money has actually been completed. Thereafter, then the president is supposed to go there with the proper planning so that he can now confirm, yes, this project is done. Then we've seen that he has to open and his name, whatever is indicated there, that's normal. But you see now, the kind of impromptu, abrupt, casual meetings that are being done, I don't know if it is under proper planning or they are, the people handling the president are misadvising him. Because when you see a situation where you go to a crowd and since Kenyatta to date, we have been seeing every other security machinery is mobilized to come where the president is. And you see people standing, so many, they cordon the whole area, and they're actually looking at the crowd. They are not looking at the president, what he's saying. That's none of their business. As police officers, They get all guys from even GSU, AP, the Kenya Police, the CID. They stand there, including some of the leaders of the area. They are after protecting the president. So they are supposed to look where the crowd is. So there is no object. It is not possible for objects to be thrown at the president. That is serious breach of security.
Okay.
I know people are saying Shuja, he's done this, he's done that, the boy that. In reality, when that shoes or object was being thrown, it should have landed in somebody's hand before it goes to the president. Now, when I look at that, I know you'll be. I mean, I know you're feeling offended that I'm attacking Shuja, Mr. Kinuthia.
No. You're free to have...
I can read his movement, but in reality, let me tell you, and we can argue. We can also make that debate differently. How great the boy might be, whatever. But look at how a member of parliament is gunned down in the city, capital city. We have UN here. We have, okay, USAID now has gone. We have several international, Red Crosses here. So, and then right at the city center, I mean, you talk about the roundabout city mortuary. That is an area properly guarded by the National Police Service. And then somebody walks to the member of parliament's window and guns him down. And then before that, actually, if you saw, Gladys Wanga is complaining bitterly. What's going on? I mean, there are so many insecurity incidents in Nairobi and in the country. So what is happening? What is the national police doing? What are the security apparatus doing? So my concern is, yes, the president can actually go around the country to tour and to look. I mean, it is his country. He's entitled. But how can you just go when people are not prepared? It is not a campaign period. You are creating a campaign mood. And then you go there before even projects have been done. So for me, if he had gone to the church and probably address the people from there and give his donation and say, I just visited to pray with you and here is my donation. Of course, again, there's criticism about donations, but that's not the point here. That would be okay. But just to run into the people, I mean, sort of police are not even prepared. There's nobody who knows what's going to happen. And then people start throwing objects. By the way, it can look casual. They can deal with the boy the way they want to deal with. But let me tell you, we look bad in the international community. We look so bad that the way we handle our president is so casual that anybody can reach him casually.
It's a good thing you've mentioned the issue of the late Kasipul Member of Parliament, because today they were in court and what they were saying is they even got the CCTV footage from private entities. Ours are not really functioning as well, which raises another concern. But coming to you, Fanyamambo, I mean, away from the late Member of Parliament's death, let's go back to this 3-day tour. Yes, there are those that are saying it's shameful, it is sad. But let's just look at the why. Why would someone throw a shoe at a president? Go back to the past. Why were rotten eggs thrown at a president? There has to be a reason. And it seems like politicians or a section of Kenyans are sort of aloof to the growing dissent in the country. Let's talk about that.
Allow me briefly to talk about something before I talk about why. My learned friend Nyaribo here comes from the school of thought that if you want to know how well a country is doing, go and look at the airport. I come from the different school of thought that if you want to know how well a country is doing, go and look at their public bus stop. Go and look at their market. Go and look at their public hospital like Kenyatta National Hospital. That's when you know how a country thinks about its citizens. I am not worried that a member of parliament is shot in public. I am worried that citizens are shot in public every day. I think the standard of measure should not be, the UN is here, Red Cross is here. No, the poor Wanjiko who has got no self-defense is here. The poor Nafula who has got nothing, even money, even Shah is not working for her, is here. And the fact that such killings can happen to members of parliament is not what should worry us. What should worry us is that the weakest in society are exposed to that kind of crime rate. Because those rich ones can even afford to hire private bodyguards. If someone is sent here as an expatriate by the UN, they can afford to hire 5 GSU for them. But Wanjiko and Nafula cannot afford. So when we look at looking bad, I'm not so worried about looking bad in the international community. I'm worried about looking bad in the eyes of 53 million Kenyans who are totally and completely impoverished, and they have no other means to protect and defend themselves. I think the message that is being sent to our leaders is, this is what is happening to Wanjiko every day. He's being killed. Go to City Mortuary. He's being killed like a useless chicken every other time. But for you, you don't feel it because you're in positions of leadership. So for me, it's not a good thing. We condole with the family. But at the same time, we are telling leadership, this is what is happening to Wanjiko every day. And it's happening on an industrial scale, almost like it's machine guns that are killing them. They are being collected every day with knives in their bodies and so on and so forth. So going to the president's tour, I keep asking, why is it necessary to launch markets? What are we selling in those markets? If you go to Gekomba here, I submit to you, other than the food items, and even within the food items, the bulk of what is being sold there is foreign goods. What are you doing as a head of state, launching a market where the bulk of what is being sold there is Chinese products?
Isn't a market a devolved function?
No,
You bought
it's
stick
first, it's a
legs.
devolved function, but number two, it's like a devolution of China. We are creating markets for China because that's what we are doing. You walk into a market today and you think you're in China. Right from the smallest item, toothpicks, mpaka ile mwiko tunapika nayo ugali, 60 years after independence, is a Chinese mwiko. Let's end this nonsense of opening new markets, because it's like we are opening spaces for China to come and sell. And let's ask ourselves, 60 years after independence, why are we importing toothpick? And what can we do as a country so that the next market we open is a market where we are proudly saying that this is a market for made in Kenya? Then now that means we are creating manufacturing. It means we are creating opportunities for young people. But what we are doing now is opening up spaces so that a Chinese manufacturer has got more outlets for their products than our own people. Mpaka Kitungu, the bulk of it is coming through the Namanga border. That we are opening up markets. You hear, oh, we've opened a market for retail, and then you ask, where is the egg coming from? Uganda. Where is the onion coming from? Tanzania. That's not a market. It's just a Tanzanian market in Nairobi.
Okay.
It's a Ugandan market for eggs in Migori. And that's where I have a problem. We are expanding markets within our country for the consumption of products of people from outside of our country. That is not development. That is development.
Okay. As you...
Yeah, I want to come in actually.
Okay.
You see, it's a very good argument. I don't need to necessarily compete because it's a good argument. In terms of security, there is apathy even among the police officers. They are just relaxed and probably I can say sort of lazy. That's my point. That's the point I'm making here, Mr. Kinuthia. I'm making the point that police are standing somewhere here and people are being killed. In this case, there is even a police officer in the car of a member of parliament. This police officer is armed as a bodyguard. But still, somebody comes, walks straight to the window and kills him. I agree. I agree that people cannot die. That one soul dying is the same, whether he's in uniform, whether he's in State House, whether he's in the village market or whatever. They are all very important, I do agree.
But as you make that point, let's not forget that a few days prior, a member of parliament had made a comment on the floor of the House saying that people die every day. We sympathize and move on.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
That's derogatory, obviously, but that's really, if you want to, I mean, we have what we call a documentary of Blood Parliament, isn't it? I mean, and they have all shot up and say this is wrong, and this is what is this happening, as if people are attacking them. But those are facts. That was very derogatory of that member of parliament to say like that. But he got an answer immediately within the same week that, I think the next day, a member of parliament was gunned down. So I agree that nobody should die. But the kind of leadership we have seems to suggest that if smaller people die, there's no problem. But you must draw a contrast. We are in a studio, isn't it? Anybody can also air their own views. They can go to a tube and say something, and it will be noted and it will be seen. But when you do a contrast, this is a national media, for example, and when you compare what we are saying here, what weight does it have compared to somebody picks up their own phone, creates a message and puts it on YouTube? I mean, he is also announcing, I mean, I'm just doing a comparison. I don't know whether it's the best example. My point is, Nairobians and Kenyans as a whole should be protected. But the point I'm making is that we are so exposed that even when you're walking in streets where there is light, look at, if you come from a village where there is no light completely, and you come to Nairobi, you're staying here in Kilimani, and there's a lot of light. Then still within that light, things which happen in the village are still happening right there where there is light. So my argument is, it is extremely reckless for people in power to actually walk around as if they are fixing something, as if they are opening, developments here and there, when people are dying. And Mheshimiwa's death is just an elaborate example of how then reckless we have become. So much so that even when you are standing next to the police officer, a criminal can still attack.
I want this conversation to move on, gentlemen.
For me, that is extremely unfortunate.
Okay.
You can be killed next to a police officer. It doesn't matter you are a member of parliament or you are just a normal citizen. Should that happen? No.
No, it shouldn't. Rebuttal as we move on.
No, quick one. I think one of the first things that happened before we can even begin to speak about, for example, the shoe which was thrown, which in my opinion, I think was not a good thing. Nobody deserves to be assaulted. The only thing we are going to throw at President William Ruto are ballots. I can tell you, in 2027, I'm going to throw a ballot against him. So those are the only things we are allowed to throw against a sitting president. Come with your ballot. It is the only weapon that you have been given. It's the only weapon you can throw against a sitting president. It's the ballot. Let us guard that weapon. Let us wait for 2027. And if there is anything we want to throw against William Ruto, let it be a ballot.
But should this be an eye-opener?
This is, if you saw his tour of Central Region, there was this desperate need to have crowds. And I was worried deeply. I'm not a security expert. I usually say where I am not. But when you saw 200-300 bodas following the presidential motorcade, something I have never seen since independence. I don't know whether you saw that. They're just closely there. And for us, what we are used to is if the head of state is coming, they clear the road a few minutes before. And when his vehicles pass, they block vehicles. They wait for him to leave, and then there's that gap created. But because there was need to have crowds in every place he was going, border people were allowed to follow his motorcade so closely. And they were chasing it so fast all over the place. That was a serious security breach. When you have 300 young people carrying passengers, following the head of state that close, they have not been pectured, they have not been checked. Nobody's know what they are carrying, what they are not carrying. That was a serious security breach, more than the throwing of the shoe. I think it's a call to the security agencies. I am not a security expert, but I feel that did not go the right way. But also most importantly is, also I think it's also good now for the head of state. When you become too common, people take you not seriously. We used to look forward to seeing Kibaki. That guy would hide in a place called State House for some time. But then you'd ask where is he, then he emerges. But he was working. He can still work without being out there and too available and too common. Even some of you girls like men who are not too available. So let's make it that way.
Well, that has gone south real fast. But coming to you, Jaribo, because you raised the issue of the late MP's death. And we have seen that, well, opposition, that is the ODM opposition, if we can call it that, because it's one leg in government and one leg out. But it's come out saying, you know what, if investigations are not done, we are going out of this still. Let's talk about that. Does that mean that perhaps there are cracks in this broad-based government that are now being seen?
I said it somewhere again. I don't know why the Nyanza people would decide to actually lie to the president or to Kenya Kwanza. And again, let's be honest with ourselves that if you are given a better job, Ashley, you will give it consideration. There's nothing wrong in that. So if, I mean, a government must have a ministry, as in this country must have ministers. And if you are approached and asked to be a minister and you don't find it wrong as per your standards, you can go and work with the government. There's nothing wrong. Now, that should be separated, as Sifuna of ODM has repeatedly said, as James Orengo, senior counsel now, is telling the ODM. Let us not deceive ourselves, nor deceive William Ruto, that we are working with him. If you have picked 2-3 people to go work in government, simply divorce yourself from the ODM party. This is the issue. And I think these issues are very germane, because has ODM actually partnered with UDA for political, to move forward together? I think Raila Odinga can also speak through other people. And I think right now, I can see his voice in what James Orengo is actually alluding to. I can also see his voice through the chairman of the ODM, Gladys Wanga. And I've always said, Honorable Raila Odinga has never reached his destination politically. So there is no surprise if, as we near 2027, if he comes around and says, no, this is not the direction I'm taking.
Yeah.
It may not make many of us happy. It would be better if he stood with the people now. But why are they then deceiving the president to that extent? They get excited, and then when things happen, because let me ask you, how many people have died? There are so many people die. But how do you quickly point out to an opponent party? I probably would blame the police. Why are they not active to protecting people? But how is Gladys Wanga so sure that we did not sign a deal to assassinate our people?
Yeah.
So that appears that they are not together, really. They are not all talking the same language. In fact, they could be in opposition.
Yeah.
Like you said, they could be one leg out, one leg in.
Do you agree with his sentiments? Do you think that perhaps the ODM team is lying to the president?
Why did William Ruto go for Baba? It's the same reason any other person would go for Baba. When he vies with Musalia Mudavadi, he gets about 48 or 49% of the votes cast. When he vies with Kalonzo the first time, second time, he still gets 48, 49% of the votes cast. Constantly, this man called Raila Amolo Odinga has got a huge following of votes, and that's why William Ruto wanted him. But in comes a gentleman called Matiang'i, and he decides to visit the Gusii region and Nyamira. And by the time he's back, the whole of Kisii is with him. What message does that send to William Ruto? It sends the message to William Ruto that part of what Raila would have brought to him, which is Gusii Nyanza, is not with Raila. And so William Ruto sits and thinks, let's see how things go. The next thing, he's turning on his television, he sees Matiang'i in Wamunyoro. And they are there with Mother Karua and the rest of it. It tells you Gusii Nyanza is gone. He goes to Western and he hears people saying Tawe. And he discovers the larger Western province is not with him. So if I was Baba, I would be worried. Because what I have always brought to the table is a constant, unthreatened 48 to 49% every election. And he proves it, whether he vies with Mudavadi as his running mate or Kalonzo, or he runs with Mother Karua. He's taken different people, and every time the results have been the same.
Do you think it's now dawning on them that they're on, perhaps
for the first time,
it was in the right trace?
He cannot speak confidently and say he has Gusii Nyanza behind him.
Yeah.
He cannot speak confidently and say he has the entire Luo Nyanza behind him. He cannot speak confidently and say he has the whole Western Bloc behind him. That would worry any politician. But secondly, and most importantly, I've heard Kenyans say that we loved Baba, but Ruto loved him more.
Actually,
yes.
When you talk about Fred Matiang'i,
yeah.
and it's so fresh after the Kisii tour. You know, no campaigns have started. Fred Matiang'i, actually, from what we know, is he has not actually done his homecoming. He came to visit his parents and family over Easter. Then he visited a couple of people.
And what was that we saw during the weekend?
He was visiting.
It was a rehearsal.
In
It was a
fact,
rehearsal, okay.
No, in reality, no, it's true. This you can ask the people at the ground, your own reporters.
Yeah.
He did not expect to go to Kisii Stadium. But after he reached the Kisii Junction and the people forced their way. So, and you know, when you talk about Kisii, you are also talking about the Kuria. I will tell you why. The Kuria expect to have their own county, and that has not happened for the longest time. And they don't see themselves to be part of Migori in terms of cultural and communal identity. So they actually identify more with the Kisii than they do with the Luo. So when Fred Matiang'i, you know, comes to do his honest homecoming, I think it will include the larger part of that southern Nyanza more than it was just the other day when he visited. And he did not go to the other side of Kisii, where Osoro, for example, comes from, and then this other side of Kisii, Ogembo, where they also were talking of if they could have their own county. So, so that was just like, I mean, he's visiting, you know, just really did not want to do those stopovers, but politicians sort of said, no, 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 no. I mean, we can't fail to identify with your image, with your personality as a, and then people are confusing the whole thing. Fred has not insisted that I have to be appointed as the president, isn't it? He has not.
But he did pledge that he will streamline and clean up the country, restore the faith of people in government so they can trust it again.
If he's given that chance. That's his point. His point is not that he's the one to do it. And if you see what he said in Nyeri also, he said, we are willing to shelve our ambitions. What does that tell you? If this team actually goes together as one, it will really annoy Kenya Kwanza. But
let's talk about this holding together. Because you see, you're balancing interests of a number of people. What is the right formula for them to succeed in this plan, you know, to make President William Ruto one-term president? They have to have a winning formula. But also we have Kalonzo Musyoka, the Wiper party leader, who wants to be president. We have Honorable Martha Karua as well. Like, how do you find a balance?
Please, Kinuthia, just if you don't mind, I finish my whatever. And then, so the point is, they are bonding right now. They're trying to meet the way you can meet people and see which is the best strategy and all that kind of thing. And I think the biggest challenge they have is that, the strategy, the agreement, who goes forward. And my point anyway was that we have not started campaigns proper, and Fred was not trying to do any campaigns. He's still an employee somewhere, I think, and he's promised to go back once he has handed over. Then he will come, then we do a proper homecoming from the airport, do a proper homecoming, and then we see how he visits all counties. So no one should panic, but there should be concern that a person can be touted as a presidential aspirant for so long when he's out of the country. That tells you that people are tired. It is not like they like Matiang'i like an angel. No, I mean, Matiang'i has been with us. He's been a minister in several ministries, yes. But when they weigh all these people, they're like, we'd better deal with Matiang'i and his team. That's why they went to meet in Nyeri. He went alone in Kisii, as you saw, I mean, because it's his home. And I think he was challenged politically that, can we see, at least say hi to your people. Let's see. And the crowd was all for him. So, and I have just seen now that elder, former CJ, is also trying to do town halls. And you can do town halls. I mean, town halls are town halls. Let's hope. let's
Fire Mambo, your take.
I think, number one, the only thing that was missing in Wamunyoro, and I don't think it was intentional, was in that parading of people, a deliberate effort to make sure that millennials and Gen Zs are seen to be part of that front line. But secondly, and most importantly, I keep telling Kenyans, the reason we go wrong is because the presidency is everything to us. And I want to tell these young people, when you mulisema siji you are partyless, I commend you for only one item, tribeless. But you cannot be formless in 2027. Young people, we must decide that we want 290 young, intelligent members of parliament, and we must put them there. I've offered myself for one of the constituencies so that I can remove from young, and I keep telling them, if you don't vote for me there, a person who told you that you had no demonstrations and that it was Photoshop will become your MP. So you have two choices. You can vote for me, or you can take back a guy who tells you that you abducted yourself and took yourself to your girlfriend's houses. So we must identify the 290 good young people and put them in parliament so that they make the right decisions for this country. And by the way, let me tell you, that president, it will not matter whether it's Matiang'i or whoever is going to be president at this point in time. Kenyans are united behind one cause. You know, taking William Ruto home is a serious national discourse. It's so important. It's like the way we dealt with, you know, other things that we have had to deal with as a country. And we are taking him home through the ballot. I've always made it very clear. Anybody who is having any other ideas, please shelve them. We want to be fair. We want to have a chance to go and queue, because let me tell you, the decision to take William Ruto home is a personal decision. Like every other person who's got a pay slip, any person who's encountered finance bill, people who've lost their children in the demonstrations, the people who've known what abductions are, it's a very personal decision. So it's not like you need to campaign around it.
But just to rebuttal on your point, how do we ensure that these young people that you say that we really need are not corrupt? Because if I can give an example of last year's finance bill, I mean, some of the ODM MPs who are now on the other side of the camp were shouting about, you know, we need to reject this finance bill. Look at us now.
I said this. You see, on that voters register, the people between 18 and 40, out of the 22 million, are 16 million. I need to repeat that. The people between 18 and 40 on the voter register that has 22 million people, those people are 16 million. So we have to ask ourselves, why do 16 million of us take the wrong people to parliament? We have told the young people, you are not going to vote for a person because they are young. You're going to vote for a person because they have shown integrity. Because some of the people who told young people that they're abducting themselves are young people as well. So we cannot forget that. And some of the people who said the most hurting things to Gen Zs during their protests and in their fight for a better country are actually young members of parliament. So that cannot be lost. So we are not saying that being young is an amenorrhea of all things, that when you're young, then you're automatically a good person. But we are able to identify good young people. And I'll give a very simple example. You walk into a matatu, and when you're walking out, your purse drops out of your, you know, or even your wallet. And there's someone honest enough to give you back your wallet and it has 10,000 shillings. That's a person fit enough to be MCA or MP or even senator or even governor. Because the bulk of the people we have in leadership today are stealing everything. So let's just get young people who mean well, who are intelligent, and of course who have been schooled, so that we don't get the kind of shenanigans that we are seeing happening to our country right now.
Okay. I want us to shift to issues of devolution. I mean, NGCDF public participation kickstarted today, I believe. And we have seen a number of Kenyans coming out saying, you know what, this works for us. But then at the end of the day, if we go back to our constitution, and good thing you're both lawyers, so you're sticklers for the rule of law, maybe you can break it down for us. We have seen President William Ruto in the past, I think just in April, calling on senators and members of parliament to grant him the permission to control the disbursement of the road maintenance levy fund. I mean, from where you sit, even before we talk about NGCDF, I mean, do you think there is goodwill from the executive or from the national government to ensure that devolution really succeeds in the country?
Well, I mean, I think there are teething issues about devolution that you cannot...
Should we call them teething at this particular point?
I will tell you why.
Okay.
Because if you talk about corruption and implementation of devolution, you may want to blame the executive, for example, but what happens when you see that governors themselves are actually not implementing devolution in terms of even paying pending bills for so long. I mean, and the money has been released by Treasury. Instead of being paid, you know, it is diverted into personal use. So there are some teething problems when you talk about implementation of devolution. But the larger blame rests in the government not wanting actually to let counties run their affairs. This is where the larger blame lies. But I think the people, either out of laziness or unwillingness to move forward, many governors do not want to implement devolution unless there's money involved. All they do every other time is to complain that the executive is not giving us money, we are not getting money from the treasury, if it's coming less. But when you go to accountability and ask them, what have you done with what you are given? Then anti-corruption is always going after their after them, and then they come here, they try to explain this or that. So the major problem we have, in my view, is that there is no cooperation between the counties and the national government in terms of implementing the devolution. But largely, actually, if the national government was interested in implementing the devolution, it would have happened.
Okay.
It would have happened. But like I said, if it did so, and then the teething problems will now look like they are at least less. But there's a big laxity on the part of the national government to implement devolution.
Okay, Fanyamambo, coming to you. I mean, NGCDF was declared unconstitutional by the High Court. They argued that the fund undermines the principle of devolution. So here we have Kenyans who are insisting that, you know what, NGCDF is helping a section of Kenyans. How do we balance those two?
I'll start from where you stopped when you said the head of state wanted the mandate to continue implementing the road maintenance levy and fund. And I asked myself, have you ever seen another country in the world that allows private contractors to come and build their roads? In China, the government builds the roads for the people. This is a government that doesn't even own a shovel. You create Kura, Kenha, what, all these roads authorities, and by the way, they are tender processing outfits. Why do you need Kura? And the only thing they do is process tender papers to give this road to so-and-so. Then Kenha, they process tender papers to give to so-and-so. Then none of them has shown us that they own a shovel and that they are capable of building a road. If the whole idea is to have all these entities processing tenders and giving tenders to tenderpreneurs, then you can just have one house in town, house all of them in there, and call them the Kenya tender experts for roads, because that's all they do. How do you explain to me in Nairobi? You have a county government. You have an agrader, ile tractor ya kulima barabara. There is an operator, who we call a driver in simple language, whose job description is to drive a county grader. This guy earns a salary. He's permanent and pensionable. Na grader ijaguruma miezi 3. Grader ijaguruma miezi 6. When they need to fix a simple pothole on our roads, they give a tender to a private guy with a private grader to come and fix those roads. Then we are having a conversation. It's because money is available. Why haven't we heard the same people saying that they want to be in charge of garbage collection in the country? It's because garbage smells and there's no money there. They just want to be in charge of tenderpreneuring outfits. I dare say we need to amalgamate all these things, Kera, Kenha, Kura, all this rubbish that was created through acts of parliament, and ask ourselves, honestly, why do you have all these outfits and none of them can build a road? And then when you look at the amount of space they occupy, the number of staff, countries that are using common sense. Kitambo, when we were small, we used to have Kenya Institute of Highways and Building Technology, where young people were taught how to use these graders and everything. And under the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Works literally did something called work. Kazi, they built roads. Now they even removed the Ministry of Works because they don't want work. They want ministries that are tenderpreneuring ministries. If they wanted work, the Ministry of Works would be there. It would have graders, and we would build our own roads. Government must build roads for people. Some of the people who are being given tenders, barabara is like you are in a ship. Somebody who is not qualified to even mend a shoe But because they have a tender company, they are given a tender to build a road. Are you surprised at the number of accidents we are seeing? Go to Ngong Road. The section between Meteorological Department to Karen is a nightmare. There's accidents happening there every day. Walijaribu kuchora lines, it was not possible. Go to Kilimani. Somebody has been given a tender outside Kilimani Primary School to paint a road that has potholes on it. These are the conversations that Kenyans don't want us to have, but we will have those conversations. Why are you painting a road that has potholes? Even you who is painting, what's wrong with your head? Why are you painting a road that has potholes? Until you are marking the road. It's outside Kilimani Primary School. I'm not making noise for nothing. So we don't have people who are willing to work. I'll give you an example of a small thing. There's a bird called a hammerkop. A hammerkop, by the way, it has a kakisongo here. It looks like a hammer. And that bird is abnormal. What it does is that it builds a very big nest. The nest is like the size of a pro box. And it's a bird, and it's a small bird. Then once it's done building, it starts collecting rubbish, a cup like this, anything it can find, an old watch, a piece of metal, anything, even old glasses, anything it can find. It fills the nest with them. And it can build another nest, maybe 3 before it dies. Those are the leaders we have in this country, where you build a war chest of money that you will never use. You stash it in Swiss accounts. People who are too greedy, you are found with millions of money in your bedroom. Yani, kwani what is wrong with people? Hii pesa yote munapeleka wapi? So they look like that bird. That bird has no, you ask that bird, what are you doing with a cup in your nest? It doesn't know. What are you doing with a nest the size of a pro box? And where that bird is this small, it's like a chicken in size. Yeah. Those are the politicians we have. They are collecting all sorts of rubbish and heaping it for themselves. Money they'll never use in their lifetime, or the lifetime of their children, or their children's children. And they are still accumulating more. This is the height of greed and shamelessness that must be stopped in the bud because it is gone too far.
And you know what you're saying paints to the bigger picture of the fact that we have a governance issue. But even as we look at the governance issue, maybe we are the problem. Because, I mean, we elect bad leaders. We elect leaders who do not work for us. Perhaps, how do Kenyans change how they view things? Because, I mean, this has been going on for years. It's not a problem that has just cropped up. We know it, but at the end of the day, when it comes to elections, it's like something happens.
Yeah, just before I come to this, I just wanted to observe that when you talk about public finances, public funds and how they are supposed to be managed, it is not uncommon in the world over for the private to be invited to build anything or to construct infrastructure for that matter, or anything. They can do what we call public-private partnerships, where they're allowed to do a road, for example, and they collect levy to recoup what they have already spent. That is not a problem, even for Kenya, by the way. That's not a problem. I mean, the problem was not asking China to build a thicker road or to build this superhighway. It is not the problem. The problem is how do you inflate a construction that was to take, say, 100 billion, it goes up to 300-400 billion. And now there is intention to build the railway again from Naivasha all the way to Busia.
Yeah.
That is not, there is nothing wrong. Even when we talk about borrowing, by the way, the borrowing was not a real problem. The problem is when these monies come in, when you hear public-private partnership, people are just using it to save on money.
Can I briefly just interject you as you make your point? I mean, you're saying the problem is not borrowing. Here we are, for example, spending 5 billion on a project. On this other hand, we've borrowed that 5 billion, but we're spending 1 billion on presidential advisors.
Yes. No, the problem.
On buying furniture in State House.
This is the point.
Buying furniture in State House.
This is the point. I mean, we're making the same point, but I don't know. I don't know. Is it what is not clear in my language? The point is, you borrow 5 billion, you borrow 5 billion, and you take a whole 1 billion to pay presidential advisors. That is not the meaning of the money you have been advanced. No government, no lender gives you money just to pay salaries to people. Most of these people, they have an agreement, a contract that says, we will give you to build a road. Then when it reaches here, the guys in Treasury and the way, I mean now, cartels and cutting deals, they come up and say, no, 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 we will allocate this much to this kind of, which is a different, non-existing project. And that's where the problem is. You ask for 600 billion, 200 billion, whatever billions, and then when it comes here, it doesn't go to do the job you have requested for. The Europe, Britain especially, for a long time suffered this with Kenya. Until they named us like, you know, the chicken gate scandal. They said, Kenyans can just carpet you because you ask for money for this. But when it is here, when they come to check and, try to verify what you have done, they actually find there's no project. So our biggest problem is corruption, pilferage of public funds. And therefore, when you hear people saying there will be a private-public partnership, it is just one excuse for stealing public funds.
Okay.
If the public-private projects are implemented honestly, because now here you are talking about Kilimani Primary. Right here on Milimani Road, just after the Integrity Center, you drive on that road. There's a particular spot that every time is actually damaged. And then there have to be vehicles coming, some tractor comes there and repairs. Just before Sacred Hotel, there's a place there. So after these rains, now it is not bad yet. But I don't know how they make it. Why? Because there's a contractor somewhere who has to keep repairing that particular place.
Okay.
But is that fair? That's corruption. So for me, it is how these funds are used that is actually hurting our economy. It's not a question of you're going to borrow, and then bring in money for infrastructure or any other development. That is okay. If it all went into that project will have enough funds to actually pay back. So,
okay.
So the biggest problem for me is pilferage and the cartels that are actually engaged in corruption.
In 30 seconds, literally 30 seconds, maybe you can answer the question that I asked him. Are we the problem, and how best can we change that?
Yes, we are the problem. I told you, the way a Kenyan buys a cow in the auction, he checks the legs, he checks the mother of the cow, he's so thorough in buying a cow at the auction. If he goes to the market, we are so thorough in checking a cow that we want to buy and take home. But when it comes to choosing the MCA, a birth certificate is enough. When a Kenyan wants a house help to come and stay in their house, they say, amefika form 4, ataweza kufanya CBC na watoto wangu, nataka yule akona exam ya form 4. But when you are coming to choose an MCA or an MP, you say a birth certificate enough. You too, kama akona birth certificate, it is enough. So he goes to parliament and then he sees 9 zeros following a number. Then he starts asking, how can 9 zeros follow a number? It's the first time he's seeing a billion written on paper. Kenyans, if really you're going to vote for anybody, from MCA all the way to MP, you must think at what level of education does a person first see a billion written on a paper? We are not going to expose people to a billion written on a paper for the first time when they are discussing our resources. You cannot have a guy who's never seen 9 zeros following a number, and he's saying, hata tunaweza punguza mbili zinajaza hii karatasi, and that's the guy you are sending to go and represent you. So we have to be serious about how we vote. The same seriousness you apply when you're choosing a goat to take home must be twice as much when you're choosing a leader to become.
Actually, just before you, I know your time is up.
30 seconds, yes.
The truth is that not all youth should actually go to contest. My brother is talking about 290 great young people should offer themselves for leadership. I agree, if they are there. But leadership is not all about elections. It's not all about MCA or MP or president. Leadership is all about how you can support this or criticize them correctly to offer us good governance. Yes.
All right, I think that's a really good place to end it. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Ishmael Nyaribo, advocate of the High Court, and Fanyamambo Kinuthia, a lawyer. And of course, this conversation continues even as we approach 2027. Thank you for your time. I'm Ashley Mazuri, our sign language interpreter was Marisha Witi. I'll see you tomorrow night. Good night.